Here we are in October and the seasonal hiring period has already begun. On this episode, we're talking about seasonal jobs. We'll talk about what seasonal jobs are, why you should apply for them, where you can find them, how seasonal jobs are different than regular jobs, and how interviews for seasonal jobs might be different than regular job interviews. There's a lot to dig into with this topic, and I believe that this time of the year is the most important period of time for high school students looking for work, and I'm going to explain why. We're going to cover this big topic, and we'll look at a student question on informing your boss that you plan to quit for a new job. All of this is coming your way on this episode. It's the week of October 5th through the 9th, and this is the QC Step Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the QC Step Podcast. I'm Corey Finneran. We've got a huge topic this week, and we talk about it every school year, and that's seasonal jobs. But before we get into that, let's look at this question that a student from Moline High School sent in. This student asks, how do you inform your boss that you plan to quit because you found a new job? That's a great question, and I think that there's really two ways to interpret this question. There's the scenario where you're looking for a new job, and then there's the scenario where you actually found a new job. So let's start with this looking for a new job scenario. If you're in an entry-level position and you're looking for a new job, maybe you want to find something that interests you more, or maybe you'd like to find a job that pays better. Maybe you want something that's closer to home. There's all sorts of reasons to look for a new job. But if you're looking for a new job, then how should you inform your boss? I don't really think that you need to. If you're applying for jobs, even interviewing for jobs, I don't think that you need to tell your boss at your existing job. I would be careful with this situation though. If you're offered an interview with a business that you applied with, and let's say that they try to schedule an interview at a time when you're scheduled to work at the job that you already have, and I would be honest with that person that's trying to schedule the interview and tell them that you're scheduled to work at that time and ask if you could schedule this interview at a different time. This hiring manager with the business that you're interviewing with, they should understand and they will probably respect your decision to fulfill your obligation to your existing employer. You might be tempted to call in sick to your work for this interview, especially if the business interviewing you is a business that you really want to work for. But that's a dangerous idea. Let's say that you call in sick for the interview and you don't get that job. Then your boss finds out that you called in sick to interview with another business. It's likely that you'll have no job in the end. Also, if you call in sick for the interview and the hiring manager that you interview with finds out, they may decide not to hire you because you called in sick when you're not sick. You called in sick to your existing job when you're not sick. And who's to say that you wouldn't do that to them if they hired you? But again, if you're working a job and you're applying and interviewing for another job, I don't think that you need to tell your manager. Now, if you're offered a position and you will be leaving your existing job, then yes, you need to tell your manager. Turning in 2 weeks' notice is pretty standard. And as soon as you're offered the position and as soon as you accept it, then you will need to talk with your manager at your first job. Let them know that you're turning in your 2 weeks' notice because you were offered a position with another business. But I wouldn't just leave it at that. I would take that opportunity to thank the manager. Thank them for the opportunity to work for their business. You could tell them about some of the work skills that you developed and thank them for the role that they played in making you a more skilled worker. The last thing that you want to do is leave an employer with a sour taste in their mouth. When they think about you, you want them to have positive thoughts. And if you turn in your 2 weeks notice, and if you thank them for the opportunity to work for them, chances are they will have positive thoughts. You never know. Maybe that manager will leave and work for another business, and someday you might interview with them for a different position. We talk a lot about networking, and maintaining positive work relationships is an aspect of networking. You never know when you might cross paths with someone again. So thanks to that student for sending in the question. If you have an employment question or a topic that you would like discussed here on the podcast, you can send those in to me by going to qcstep.com, click on this image, and then fill out this form. If you have any questions on job applications or job interviews or on the job topics like how to handle certain situations, send those in and we'll include them in future episodes. Right now, lots of retail businesses are advertising that they have seasonal positions available. Some of you may not know what seasonal positions are, and maybe this is the first time that you're hearing about them. Although it's only October, the beginning of October, businesses are starting to prepare for the holidays. We're already starting to see some businesses with holiday decorations for sale. Business in a lot of different industries picks up this time of the year, but retail probably sees the most growth. Retail businesses have more people coming through their doors, so they need to hire extra help to take care of those customers. The sales growth is somewhat temporary though, and it slows back down after the holidays, so the extra workers that they need are usually temporary positions. Although, just because you get a seasonal position doesn't mean that you can't be kept on after the holidays, and we'll be talking about that in the next week or two here on the podcast. Seasonal jobs aren't just in the retail industry though. Because retail stores need more merchandise, things pick up for freight businesses and for warehouses. Because more people are out shopping, business picks up for restaurants and for fast food. Many areas of the economy see a boost this time of the year, and the businesses need extra help to handle that boost. So that's what seasonal jobs are. But why should you apply for a seasonal job? Well, there's lots of reasons. If you've never worked a real job before, seasonal jobs are a great idea because it allows you to gain some work experience. Because businesses need to hire a large number of seasonal employees, you might have a better chance of getting a job with no real work experience now compared to if you're applying for jobs in the spring without work experience. Also, if you're hired, even if you're not kept on after the holidays, that's good work experience, and you'll be able to add that to your resume and to your applications that you'll be filling out in the future. Another reason that you should apply for seasonal jobs is that it allows you to build your work skills. If you have never worked with the public, or if you think that your customer service skills might be weak, then working a seasonal position is like a crash course in customer service. You will gain lots of experience, and if you put the effort in, your customer service skills will be much better within a few short months. Another reason to work seasonal positions is that it gives you the opportunity to try out a job. Maybe you're not sure if a retail job is for you. Maybe you're not sure if it's the right fit. Seasonal positions are a great opportunity to give this type of job a test run. At the end of the holidays, you might realize that you actually like working retail and that you like working with the public more than you ever thought that you would. In a way, you could consider this type of employment a long job shadow, which we talked about on the last episode of this podcast, episode number 94. And the best thing about this job shadow, you get paid. That's maybe the best reason that you should, the best reason to work a seasonal job. If you have a good attitude and you work hard, you can make quite a bit of money in seasonal employment. There's typically a lot of hours to go around, and if you're eager to work and you do a good job, you'll probably get about as many hours as you want. So now that I've convinced you that you should be applying for seasonal jobs, where do you find them? Like I said earlier, almost every retail store hires for seasonal openings. Restaurants and fast food businesses are hiring this time of the year. FedEx, UPS, and the warehouses, they're hiring this time of year. So how do you know exactly who is hiring? Many businesses list their job openings on their websites. They list them in the newspaper. There's online resources like Indeed.com. And if there's a specific business that you would like to apply with, you can contact that store directly. You can go into a business or you can call them and ask them if they have seasonal positions available. We do list job openings on QCStep.com, but there's typically so many businesses hiring seasonal positions this time of the year, we don't have them all listed. So my suggestion is that if you want to know if a business is hiring seasonal positions, then go in or call and ask. So how are seasonal jobs different than regular jobs? The main way that they're different is that these positions are typically seasonal, meaning that when the holidays are over and the business slows down, then the people that were hired to fill these positions are laid off. Your work assignment has ended. However, like I said, in the next week or two, I'm going to dive into that topic and talk about how there's actually some things that you can do to increase your chances of being kept on after the holidays and become a regular employee. But that's the biggest difference with these seasonal positions is that there's no guarantee of a job after the holidays. So let's look at how interviews for seasonal positions might be different than regular job interviews. Businesses that are hiring for seasonal positions have a limited amount of time to hire a rather large number of people. So these interviews, they may be different than your typical job interviews. It's common for businesses to do group interviews, and a group interview is when the hiring manager or multiple managers sit down with a group of applicants and interview everyone in the group at once. So basically, your competition, the person that you're trying to beat out for the job, is sitting right next to you. And group interviews are really challenging. If you're shy and if you don't like to speak up, it's unlikely that you will be offered a position. If you go back and watch episode number 48 of the QC Step podcast, that episode is entitled 5 Tips for Standing Out in a Group Interview. I would encourage you to watch or listen to that episode. In fact, we've done a lot of episodes on interviewing, and whether it's a group interview or not, I would suggest going to qcstep.com/list and going through the list of our podcast episodes and watching or listening to the different episodes on interviewing. If you do that, I think you will have a much better chance of being offered a seasonal position. If a business that you would like to work for is doing seasonal hiring and you would like help from Gary or Carrie with applying for those jobs or preparing for the interview, then contact them through your STEP teacher, or you can email info@qcstep.com. On this episode, we talked about talking with your boss and leaving your job for a new position. We also talked about why it's important to turn in 2 weeks' notice when you leave one job for another. That was a question from a student, and don't forget, if you have employment questions that you would like discussed here on the podcast, then send those in. We also talked about seasonal jobs. What are they? What types of businesses have seasonal openings? We talked about why you should work a seasonal job, where to find those openings, and how these positions are different than regular jobs, and we talked about how seasonal job interviews might be different. Don't forget to go back to episode number 48 of the QC Step podcast. It's about group interviews, and it's quite possible if you apply for a seasonal job, you could encounter a group interview. So that does it for this episode, and I will be back next week with episode number 95 of the QC Step podcast.